We have a Daniel. What's up, Daniel? So, task number 6, group policies. This task is part of the Active Directory basics modules inside the complete beginner path on TryHackMe. So far, we have organized users and computers in operational units just for the sake of it. But the main idea behind this is to be able to deploy different policies for each organizational unit individually. That way, we can push different configurations and security baselines to users depending on their departments. Windows manages such policies through Group Policy Objects, GPO. GPOs are simply a collection of settings that can be applied to organizational units. GPOs can contain policies aimed to either users or computers, allowing you to set a baseline of specific machines and identities. To configure GPOs, you can use the Group Policy Management tool available from the Start menu. If we go to Group Policy Management, the first thing that we will see when opening it is your complete organizational unit hierarchy as defined before. To configure group policies, you first create a GPO under Group Policy Objects and then link it to the organizational unit where you want the policies to apply. As an example, you can see there are some already existing GPOs in your machine. If we expand also Group Policy Objects, we can see what we see in the TryHackMe snapshot. GPOs are created in here, Group Policy Objects, and then GPOs are linked to organizational units. Default domain policy, right? And we see default domain controller policies, RDP policy. Also, we can see actually is this one, default domain policy, which is this one, right? This is for the domain controller, right? This is for the domain controller, default domain controller policy. We can see in the image above that 3 GPOs have been created. For those, the default domain policy and RDP policy are linked to the TryHackMe.local domain as a whole, and the default domain controller policy is linked to the domain controller organizational unit only. Something important to have in mind is that any GPO will apply to the linked OU and any sub-OUs under it. For example, the sale organizational unit will still be affected by the default domain policy, which is this one, right? And not only sales, but everyone, everything inside here, right? From here. Any GPO will apply to the linked organizational unit and any sub-organizational units under it, right? RDP policy and default domains will apply to everything. Default domain policy and RDP policy will not only apply here in the Group Policy Objects, but it actually will apply to everything inside here. Let's examine the default domain policy to see what's inside the GPO. The first tab you'll see when selecting a GPO shows its scope, which is where the GPO is linked in the Active Directory. We can see it over here. We have a scope. Let's go to RDP policy. We have the scope over here. The first tab you'll see for the current policy, we can see that it has only been linked to the TryHackMe.local domain. We see the default domain inside the Group Policy Objects, which is this one, and we see the exact same thing as RDP policy. As you can see, you can also apply security filters to GPOs so that they are only applied to specific users' computers or computers under an organizational unit. By default, they will apply to the authenticated users group, which includes all users or PCs and PCs. The settings tab, we can see details here, settings, security filtering is right over here, and we can see that it applies to authenticated users. Then we have settings. The settings tab includes the actual contents of the GPO and lets us know what specific configurations apply. As stated before, each GPO has configurations that apply to computers only and configurations that apply to users only. In this case, the default domain policy only contains computer configuration. We can see it over here. For users, we have nothing. But for computer configurations, we have something set up. As we can see here, for example, security settings. We can see what is set for security, Windows settings. Right, and we can see as a drop down, this is a hierarchical, let's say, ladder, if you can see. Policies for Windows settings, policies for Windows security, and then options, right? It's the same snapshot from TryHackMe. Feel free to explore the GPO and expand on the available items using the show link over here. We can see show, right? And we can see what's inside it. On the right side of each configuration, in this case, the default domain policy indicates really basic configurations that should apply to most domains, including password and account lockout policies. Since this GPO applies to the whole domain, any changes it would affect all computers. Let's change the minimum password length policy to require users to have at least 10 characters in their passwords. To do this, right-click on GPO and then select Edit. Okay, we go over here, we select Edit. It will be prompted to this one, to this page, right? We go to Policies. Hierarchical again, Windows settings, then we go to security settings, and then we see password policies. Let's expand a bit more. Actually, account policies, and then password policies. We see minimum password age, minimum password length, which is what we care about, right? We have to change it from 7 to 10. Actually, we go up 3 more times. We apply, boom. Minimum password length now is 10 characters. This will open a new Windows where we can navigate. Right, we basically saw that. We set to 10 characters. It's exactly like in the TryHackMe snapshot. As you can see, plenty of policies can be established in GPO while explaining every single of them would be impossible in a single room. Do feel free to explore a bit. So, as some of the policies are straightforward, if more information on any of the policies needed, you can double click them and read the Explain tab on each of them. For instance, minimum password length, double click, explain, and you can see what's it about, right? You can read more about it. And you can do this with any policy. GPO distribution. GPO are distributed to the network via a network share called sysvol, which is stored in the DC. All users in a domain should typically have access to this share over the network to sync their GPOs periodically. The sysvol share points by default to the C-Windows sysvol directory on each of the DCs in our network. Once a change has been made to any GPOs, it might take up to 2 hours for computers to catch up. If you want to force any particular computer to sync its GPOs immediately, you can always run the following command on the desired computer. We force basically the change, creating some GPOs to TryHackMe Inc. As part of our new job, we have been tasked with implementing some GPOs to allow us to block non-IT users from accessing the control panel, and to make workstations and servers lock their screen automatically after 5 minutes of user inactivity to avoid people leaving their sessions exposed. Let's focus on each of those and define what policies we should enable in each GPO and where they should be linked. Restrict access to control panel. We want to restrict access to control panel across all machines to only the users that are part of the IT department. Users of the other departments shouldn't be able to change the system preferences. Let's create a new GPO called Restrict Control Panel Access and open it for editing. Since we want this GPO to apply to specific user, we will look under user configurations for the following policies. Here we can see that now we close the account policies, create a GPO in this domain and link it here. The name is Restrict Control Panel Access. Okay, we've hit yes. We see it over here and we see it also over here. By default, it will create here as well. Right click, edit. And then we go to user configurations, policies, administrative. Let's expand this, administrative templates, and then control panel, right? And in here, prohibit access to control panel and PC settings is not configured, right? We enable this, we apply, right? It's enabled. The state is enabled. We have no comment. And now, notice we have enabled the prohibit access to control panel and PC settings policy. Yes, we did that. Once the GPO is configured, we will need to link it to all of the organizational units corresponding to users who shouldn't have access to the control panel of their PCs. In this case, we will link to the marketing, management, and sales organizational units by dragging the GPO to each of them. Okay, so management, marketing, and sales. Management, marketing, and sales. Management, marketing, and sales. And now we can see it here in links. We can see all three organizational units. I think I've done a mistake here because we don't need it here. We don't need it to be applied to everything, even though we custom, let's say, this access. We only need this in group policy objects. Autolock screen GPO. For the first GPO regarding screen locking for workstations and servers, we could directly apply it over the workstation, servers, and domain controllers OUs we created previously. While this solution should work, an alternative consists of simply applying the GPOs to the root domain, as we want the GPO to affect all of the computers. Since the workstation, servers, and domain controllers are organizational units, are all child organizational units for the root domain. They will inherit its policies, exactly like what we did. Note, you might notice that if our GPO is applied to the root domain, it will also be inherited by other organizational units like sales or marketing. Since these organizational units contain users only, any computer configuration in our GPO will be ignored by them. Let's create a new GPO, call it Autolock Screen, and edit it. The policy to achieve what we want is located in the following route. So the policy is under GPO Management Editor, Computer Configuration Policies, Windows Settings, Security Settings, Local Policy, Security Options, and then here we see Machine Inactivity Limit. We have 300, okay, and here we say 300, apply, okay. We will set the inactivity limit to 5 minutes so that computers get locked automatically if any user leaves their session open. After closing the GPO editor, we will link the GPO to the root domain by dragging the GPO to it. Okay, so this one is saved. Okay, let's create a new one. We say auto lock screen right click edit, and we go computer configuration policies, Windows settings. Let's expand this a bit. Security settings, local policies, and then security options. And in here, machine inactivity limit, define this policy settings. Here we say 300, apply, okay, and then it's applied to everything. Once the GPO has been applied to the correct organization, we can log in as any user in either marketing, sales, or management for verification. For this task, let's connect via RDP using Mark's credentials. Add the basics. And here we say TryHackMe Mark. Password will be M4 ET1 NG.21. Okay, let's try to access control panel. We don't have access to that, right? Which is very good. When connecting to the RDP, the mark okay, we specify okay. If we try opening the control panel, we should get the message indicating this operation is denied by the administration. Yes, by the administrator. You can also wait 5 minutes to check if the screen is automatically locked if you want. Since we didn't apply the control panel GPO on IT, you should still be able to log into the machine as any of those users and access the control panel. Well, in our case, this will apply to IT also, because I linked it under the root user, under the root domain. If you created and linked the GPOs, but for some reason they still don't work, remember you can run a GPU update, GP update, and then /force to force the GPOs to be updated. Yeah, so in our case, it's no needed. Answer the questions below. What is the name of the network share used to distribute GPOs to domain machines? GPOs are distributed to the network via network share called sysvol. Can a GPO be used to apply settings to users and computers? Obviously. Okay, let's wait 5 minutes and see what will happen. We should get a login screen. As you can see, we have a disconnection after 5 minutes. Awesome.